Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learn with Jason. Today on the show, we've got James. James, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It is great to have you on the show. So I'm excited for everything that we're going to talk about, but let's start by setting a little bit of context. For folks who aren't familiar with you, do you want to give us a bit of a background on yourself?
Yeah. So I kind of have a hybrid background. I
Okay.
started as a designer, a UI designer, and I had just a natural interest in writing code. So I taught myself how to write JavaScript primarily, starting in
Okay.
like 2010 or so. And then I kind of followed all the way through as a full stack engineer for the last 12 years or so. And so I'm kind of half design, half development. And
Gotcha.
I really sink my teeth into the React ecosystem and front end stuff in specific. But I write TypeScript front to back. So I'm the CEO of Payload CMS and just went full time on it, actually. I've
Oh,
been
nice.
in the agency world for the last 7 years. And we're closing the agency down, bringing all the employees over to Payload, and just going full speed ahead on Payload. So it's a really exciting time for me.
Yeah, that's super exciting. That's always a good moment too when you're able to actually go full time on the thing, right? How long were you working on Payload CMS before you went full time on it?
A couple years.
Oh,
My
okay.
agency was using it as dog food for our
Okay.
own projects. And those projects were anything from like a full e-commerce, like custom product designer to like an Uber for snowplows to enterprise websites, you name it. But we took a lot of care in the design of the API to try
Hmm.
and reduce breaking changes as much as possible once we released it for public beta and now 1.0 production. So it's been years in the making, but we've been since 1.0, we released 1.0 in July of this past summer.
Hmm.
And that was right in the middle of Y Combinator. So it's been a crazy couple months for me. And I had a newborn in May. So just add on the life events and I've
No
got it
kidding.
covered. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've just had a real boring go of it for the.
I don't know what day it is. I don't know what time it is. I
Yeah.
just,
No kidding.
yeah.
Sheesh. Well, that's exciting. And so I'm always curious when it comes to something like this. So you were at an agency. You built out Payload CMS presumably to scratch your own itch. You had a need. You wanted to solve things in a way that you didn't feel was being met by the market. So what? I guess here. So here's a question: is Payload CMS bootstrapped, or did you end up taking investment for it?
We built the entire thing, including all the way up to 1.0, completely bootstrapped. But we did just graduate from Y Combinator, summer 22 batch. And so
Nice.
that was our first investment that we took.
Hmm.
And then we just raised a bunch of money from some pretty notable investors, which we have an announcement coming out within the next month. It's going to coincide with our launch week, which is November 14th. We're going to do a fundraising announcement among many other things. And so we're no longer bootstrapped, but
Nice.
for the first couple of years, we definitely, after hours passion project, pour in our heart and soul into this. And as you know, it's open source as well. So it's just fully MIT licensed and we got their bootstrap for sure.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on the raise. That's look forward to that announcement. Um, so let's talk a little bit about. Actually, I kind of want to do two things here because we're talking today about building scalable design systems for enterprise websites, and this is sort of the holy grail, right? Like when I went over to IBM in 2016, one of the big things that they were struggling with, my whole feed just went super weird. Is
I see that. Yeah.
well, it looks okay on. Hmm.
Yeah.
Look.
I think it's good. I just think it's our little preview window that's jacked up.
Oh, that's not good. Okay, well, let's see if that clears itself up when it comes time for screen share, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, so we're talking. When I joined IBM, there was a project underway that had been underway for a while called Carbon Design System,
Oh
and
yeah.
the intention of this project was how do you get 30 plus teams who all need to build for the web, who use Angular, Vue, React, Backbone, jQuery, no framework. how do you get them all to build something in a way that feels cohesive? And how do you do that in a way that doesn't require you to just wield the hammer of authority and basically tell people, do it this way or you're fired, right? And something that I thought was really unique about Carbon was that they had the buy-in that they could have gone out and just like swung that hammer and said like, no, this is the way we do things. You either adopt this or you're fired. And instead, they wanted to win the hearts and minds of developers and actually get them to choose this design system. And it's hard, it is an extremely challenging thing to do, to go out and convince people who, let's do a little philosophical aside. But are you familiar with the concept of dark matter developers?
No.
So there's this idea that like when you get on Twitter, you're seeing the loudest and most visible voices in development, and they're the extreme edges of the bell curve, right? The vast majority of developers, there are millions of developers, they're not on Twitter, they're not on social media, we don't hear from them, they're just doing their jobs. And so for those developers, those dark matter developers, they're not in it for like the excitement of the latest framework or the drama on JavaScript Twitter or any of, they're there because they've got a job, they got to ship this thing, and then they want to go home and spend time with their families or have their hobbies or whatever it is that they do. And at IBM, there are a lot of folks who don't identify as their career. They're not there because they live and breathe code. And in a lot of cases, they've inherited systems that are really, they're legacy code. They haven't been updated in a really long time. There are, a lot of issues with it. It's basically so complicated at this point that it's like what I've joked is an append only file, where, they just, it's a million lines of code and you can only add to the bottom because they don't know how to change anything in the top because it's all 15 years old and they, I don't know what happens when you delete that. So when you've got a group of developers who absolutely do not want excitement in their job, you can't go out and run a hype tour. Oh, we've got this amazing build, this new component system. It's going to change everything. It's going to be so nice and modern. They're like, I don't care. Don't make me do work. Don't touch my stuff. Like, I got tickets. I need to get these tickets done and then I want to go home. So what you're talking about is an extremely challenging thing, right? At least in my experience. So how do you approach this? Like, I guess what led you to even think that this was the right topic to try to tackle?
So I have to draw an important distinction, like Carbon design from IBM and like material design from Google. Those are like true visual design languages that like focus on the very, very granular pieces of a UI language, like shadows and depth and like what pixel rounded edges you need for many different components. And there's like an infinite depth to that entire arena of work. But what I'm going to focus on today is actually more about how to set up like a tool for editors to use that like it's more about giving control, but not giving too much control.
Gotcha.
Because if you think about like a WYSIWYG page builder, like Squarespace or Elementor or any of those, like even Webflow to an extent, like you get so much control and then your editing team goes crazy. And then they have like red paragraph and then they have like bold, italic, underline all in the same little area. And like, they get wild with the tools that they're given and they have too much control and they end up creating a Frankenstein out of the tools that you've given them. And so for me, today's topic will be about how to structure a CMS and then the front end that corresponds with it to deliver enterprise editors with the flexibility that they need to be able to maintain a large web project over time, but not allow them to go off the rails and create the Frankenstein that we want to avoid. So like the design system that I'm talking about is like maybe one level up of that, like the minutia at the shadows and the border radius and everything. And it's more about like, how do you structure a CMS so that you deliver just the right amount of control and like a very deliberate manner so that it can't be hijacked and manipulated, right? And I'm passionate about that because, for me, like being that I sit on kind of the design and the development table both, like I've had to design and build large CMS for a lot of my agency clients. One of them was Klarna, actually, in 2019, and they had 30 content editors from all over the world. There was a site for Germany, for Sweden, for Australia, North America, UK, and they all had to use these same tools, but to express very different messages. So, like, how do
Right.
you design these tools and then equip content managers with tools that they can be productive with, but not like go off the rails? Right.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That makes sense. That makes sense. And so is this the like intended purpose of Payload CMS? Is it's that like pairing with the editors and the developers to try to set up the right guidelines, or is this an application of Payload CMS?
I think it's an application of Payload, and I think we got to get a little philosophical again for a second
Let's
because
do
this
it. This
is
is my favorite part of this show.
so right now, like, there's one blanket term to refer to anything like what Payload is, and like
Mm-hmm.
what Strapi is, and what Directus is, and Sanity content management system, right? But
Right.
in reality, content management system is thought of as managing content for brochure websites, right? Like, you use a content management system to power a website,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, but in reality, content to the internet means a lot more. Like, let's take, for example, Spotify. Someone at Spotify has to manage album art and playlists and artist descriptions and all of the metadata that goes with all of that. And then that content gets used in apps, right?
Right.
It doesn't get used in a website, but it's still content that powers the internet. And in the same way as that, you could with a content management system that's appropriately flexible, you could manage orders, you could manage shipments, you could manage requests, you could manage customer profiles. All of that is content that you need to have an admin interface to manage. But is that really a CMS? It's hard to like put a label on it, right? So I
Mm.
think that like the industry as a whole is like kind of needing a better label for the power that managing content represents outside of just calling everything a CMS. So the reason I'm saying this is because I think Payload, one application is to power websites in the right way so that they can't be turned into Frankenstein. But Payload is much more powerful than that. It actually kind of borders on like an application framework because of our deep access control and because of our hook-based infrastructure and
Okay.
all of this server-side stuff. So I wouldn't want to trivialize it by saying this is the only thing it's good for, but that's why we just picked the label CMS for now, because that's what everybody resonates with. But I think there's room for improvement there.
Yeah, and you bring up something interesting, which is it kind of touching on what I'm starting to feel is a bit of a sea change in the way that we relate to the internet in general. I feel like when we first started building for the web, the website was sort of an add-on. The app was kind of an add-on, and you would use it as a bonus to go along with the retail experience or the in-person experience or sitting down at the restaurant. And now you kind of like the website for, Betterment, for example, the financial institution, that's their entire experience. I don't know if you can even get a person on the phone and have a phone experience. They don't have branches, so you can't walk in anywhere. There is no real life experience of Betterment. The website is everything. And
Absolutely.
their app and their web interface is the whole thing. And that fundamental shift has really pushed a lot of things that I think would have been considered specialty, like a deep content experience for an ultra complex set of, inventory management or whatever it was. It kind of felt like for a while we looked at it as, well, if you have really complex inventory, you use something like Shopify because they're built for managing like inventory. And then anything else is just content, right? So just put it into a CMS. So you bring up a really good point that like we've sort of evolved to an additional layer here where the web is the primary entry point for the vast majority of businesses. And for many businesses now, it's the only surface area, which means all of that complexity is in the web now. And we have to be able to, both as web developers think and reason about it, which is why I get so excited about things like serverless functions and edge functions, because it flattens that learning curve of dealing with that complexity. But then you also have to think about how you manage, how do the people who work on the website work? What are the ergonomics of the people who have to manage this? How do you make sure that you don't, as you say, create this sort of Frankenstein mess of like people have unlimited flexibility and they will absolutely use it. We've all seen posters designed in Microsoft Word by somebody who didn't have any constraints. And that's clearly not an acceptable way to move forward on the web. So this is interesting. You're in a cool space here, and I like the angle. I like where your head's at.
Yeah, it all just kind of arose out of necessity, like you said early on too, because my agency was building pretty complex things, and we'd have to like kind of assemble different technologies. And sometimes we would go to Laravel and we would build a Laravel app if we needed like super powerful backend stuff, like couldn't fit inside of a CMS, for example. But what we've built with Payload is basically to be kind of like the silver bullet solution for any type of content infrastructure. And you own the backend as well as the front end. So you can build any type of functionality, integrate with any other third-party service because you've got the back-end infrastructure already. And it's just the beginning. We've got a lot of stuff in store, and I'm pretty excited about it. But the industry's changing. Like you said, content is critical, and to power critical infrastructure, you need to have a tool that you can rely on. And that's what we're trying to do.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk through a little bit of what we're going to do today specifically. So we're going to be working with the Next.js app. We're going to set it up with Payload CMS. How do you what is the overarching goal for what we're going to accomplish?
So I have three things.
Okay.
Number one is a Figma file. And number two is the CMS repo itself. So the Figma file gets translated into the CMS. And then we're going to have a website repo on Next.js as well. All of it's built in TypeScript on both the CMS and the Next side. But you can see kind of the progression of going from Figma to the CMS to the website. And we can just review them all. I don't think we really need to write any code today unless we find something that we want to play around with. But my team and I just kind of splashed out a bunch of stuff over the last, I'd say 24 hours. It was kind of a mad sprint here, but we got some cool stuff done, and it should be, let me share these with you real quick. It should be pretty cool.
Nice. All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to flip us over into our next view here. We're going to move over into the pair programming view, and I'm going to move the cameras off so we don't get inception. Here we go. And so first, let's do a shout out to the captioning. We have Rachel with us today. This episode, like every episode, is being live captioned. That's through White Coat Captioning. Thank you very much. And that's made possible through the support of our sponsors. We've got Netlify, NX, and New Relic, and soon Pluralsight. Still working on that paperwork. We're going to have the support that allows this show to continue to function. So thank you all very much for that. We are talking today to James. Make sure you head over and give a follow on the old Twitter. And we're talking about, I'm in the wrong window, this window. We're talking about Payload CMS, which I'm making a guess. There it is. PayloadCMS.com. So make sure you go over and give that a follow as well. All right. So at this point, I have installed MongoDB. That was thing one. Let's make sure that worked. Mongo. What is that?
Huh. I don't know. Usually it would just tell you the version, right? Looks like you have it though.
Yeah, do I need to brew services? Oh, I have to actually start it. That's what I did wrong. So we start it. Good.
Looks promising.
Still no. Let's see, shutting down. Do I have to oh, don't you tell me I have to restart my computer for this to function.
We can just get a Mongo Atlas too if we want.
We might need to if it's brew services restart. Wait, why do you think I need Postgres? Make sure Postgres is stopped.
Oh, maybe does it run on the same port? Does
Share the
Postgres run
same data directory. You can move to a different one. Why is Mongo using Postgres at all?
Looks like it's probably just conflict of the place that it stores the data.
Fun.
Maybe.
Okay.
Well, we probably could get pretty far without even needing the database. Like we could pull up the Figma file and review that.
Yeah,
And then,
let's start there, and then we can start digging into the other pieces and solve those problems as we get to them. And I have learned my lesson. I'm gonna set up the database ahead of time next time.
Oh, it's all good. We'll figure it out. Okay, so you can actually click on my pointer there. Yeah, and then you just follow me. But basically what I've got here is just a quick and dirty Figma file that kind of goes over some principles that we try to bake into our front end framework when we translate like CMS building blocks. And there's a couple very important, like fundamental rules that if you follow, everything will become a lot easier. And the first one is just setting your type properly. And this is no surprise to anybody, but typically the designers at my agency would go through and create type styles out of every different heading and maybe just some branded elements as well. So like maybe we have large body copy in addition to the headings, and then like a label, and then just some button styles here. And like this is all meant to be pretty wireframey and not like highly designed, more so just to show the intent of the different pieces that build up like a typical CMS.
Yeah, gotcha.
But we also show the margins. So like this heading 1 here has 72 pixels on the top and 48 on the bottom. 60 and 48, blah, blah, blah. And then we do this for each breakpoint. So this is the large breakpoint here. And then we have another set of type styles for the laptop size breakpoint.
Okay.
And then we have another one for mobile. And if you lay this out like this in Figma as a reference, then your engineers that actually have to translate the site are going to have a lot easier of a time just translating all of this stuff over into CSS. So when we clone those repos down, we'll be able to see how they translate into the CSS. But this is pretty much where we start. And it's just a quick get everybody on the same page and have like a source of truth for the type sizing and the hierarchy. This is just all the system font. So it's all SF Pro, whatever display.
Right.
But yeah, so after we define the type and the buttons, we want to talk about block spacing. And block spacing is something that you can quickly run into a lot of problems unless you very, very clearly and deliberately structure it. So typically for a lot of websites, you have like different background color blocks. And the funny thing about those different background color blocks is like, what I'm looking at here is like 3 blocks: content block, content block, content block. And the first one should have 120 pixels padding on the top. But if the second block is the same background color as the first, it should have less space between them. Right?
Got it.
If you doubled up the 120, that's going to be a huge space between the blocks, right? So you want to have some programmatic way of enforcing block spacing so that blocks of the same background color can collapse their margins on top of each other. And maybe I skipped a little bit of this, but generally everything that we do nowadays is going to be on a layout building mentality, like a block building mentality. So like all the big CMSs do this really well now. Like Prismic has slices, which are great. Contentful, you can build in layout builders with references to other content models. And you want to craft your page content on a layout building mentality. But when you give that control to editors and you don't have a very good mindset over how to space the blocks from one another so that the vertical rhythm is always going to be built on your baseline grid, and it will always be appropriately spaced no matter what the block background colors are, right? So like if you switch to a dark background, bam, you're going to need 120 pixels again, and then another 20 pixels. But if the 2 blocks are the same background color, then they should condense and they should be smaller, right?
Gotcha.
So we try to spell all of that out as much as possible. And then we try to programmatically enforce it when we get to the front end in the Next.js stuff. So we've got a lot of that stuff to show as well. But this is huge. Like this will help your site feel consistent and structured rather than if you're like defining block spacing like all willy-nilly on every single block. It's different everywhere. It's gonna lack that vertical rhythm that's so necessary.
Right. Right. And as a big fan of willy-nilly myself, I have to agree with this. It's not right everywhere.
Exactly. If you can enforce it programmatically, you're going to benefit from an aesthetic perspective for sure.
For sure.
Then the other thing is, if you are going to be putting text inside of a block, then you need to turn off the first child's top margin and the last child's bottom margin. This is wrong because this is going to create too much space. So you have to automatically disable the top and bottom margins, because we have on our what is this, H4?
Right.
We have 36 pixels on top of it. But if you keep that, then your rhythm is going to be all crazy, because you're going to have the 36 pixels up here, and then it's going to overlap, and you're going to create extra space. So you have to turn that top and bottom margin off for your first and last. And again, doing that programmatically is going to be the best bet, because your editors won't be able to screw it up.
Exactly, right? Like, I think one of the big pieces that is really challenging with this is, you know, as engineers, we are we have a tendency toward configuration, and we think to ourselves, well, somebody might need that, so I'll add a switch for it. You know, I'll let them set that to true if they need that margin, or like margin collapse true, or something like that, right? Where you start making all these configurations, but then when you go and hand this to an editor and they open up the page and it's just 1,000 checkboxes, they're like, I'm just not going to use this. Right? It's just the immediate overwhelm, and or worse, they just start checking buttons and they're not 100% sure what they do, and then they don't go back to like a default, so it just ends up being kind of messy, right? And or each one this is always my favorite, each one adopts their own signature style, as all of us who have received an email that was clearly edited to use like Comic Sans or something is like, I see you found the font setting in your email editor, right? It's like, you don't want your CMS to have that same option where somebody can be like, well, I want every page that I write to have a signature style.
I could not have said any of that better myself. You don't know how many times I've built a CMS and I've included the checkboxes for like turn off top margin, turn off bottom margin, like padding top medium, padding top large. Like giving them too much control like that is the killer of any good UI. And honestly, even the most powerful user, like the power users of your CMS, probably don't want that. They probably want it to be handled for them. So if you can come up with a mindset of like building that into your structure, your project is going to be more successful. And that's pretty much like the ethos of what I'm trying to show today, is like, if you can force it, it will turn out better.
And I think, I mean, the other thing to consider too, for folks who are maybe looking at this going, but I want that setting, is like, what job is somebody showing up to do when they use a tool? You know, I'm an engineer, I'm showing up because I need to tweak this stuff. And so of course the job that I need my tools to do is to give me that optionality. And, you know, maybe my components let me do that. But as a content editor, the job I'm showing up to do is putting content on this website. And I'm not there to design. I'm not there to configure. And if I have to, it takes me out of the job that I'm trying to do and into a different job. And that context switching is hard. And it also puts people out of their expertise. An expert writer is not necessarily an expert designer, and vice versa. And that's why we don't want designers writing ad copy, and we don't want advertisers writing, like doing our designs. And the CMS, you know, the CMS needs to respect like who's here to do what job and make sure that it keeps them in the right context.
Exactly. And it's funny, in the comments right now, we have Ben Myers saying he wants red, bold, uppercase, underlined, italicized. You know, maybe we can make a special CMS for you.
That one just publishes to nowhere, Ben.
That's called brutalist design right there. Have fun. Oh yeah. No, I think we're really on the same page with all of this so far, and it's good stuff. But yeah, this is where we start. And like this little Figma exercise here is very rudimentary. Like we didn't put any time into making this like beautiful from a design perspective. It's utilitarian. It's supposed to be the nuts and bolts of like the core ideas. So like, obviously we didn't pick the fonts or anything, but I think with this is just kind of like a quick style guide. We usually write up some rules, how to break it down on laptop, mobile, large, stuff like that. And then we just kind of set up the roadmap for when we go to start writing the code, we have an exact understanding of what we're going to do. So with that, let's look at the second part of the Figma file, shall we?
Let's do it. Where do I go? Oh, I'm following you.
You can just follow me, yeah. Okay, so with any website, at least for my agency, the last probably 4 years, this is our kind of paradigm. We break up the website interface into the hero section, which is above the fold, right? That's like the above the fold in quotes, I guess. The fold doesn't exist, whatever. But the hero section, like this is what a lot of people consider as like a template, which it's not a template. It's just the first block on the page, right? But like heroes are kind of going to need to be visually distinct from one another. Like on a home page, you're probably going to have like a high impact, very graphical, like something that's going to make a branded statement. And then when you get further into the website, you're going to have more utilitarian heroes that might maybe have a couple jobs to fill, maybe a couple calls to action. And then the tertiary pages like privacy policy and things like that are going to have like the lowest impact. Just give me a headline and get to the page content, right?
Right.
But like that first section, the heroes, what we try to do is come up with like a set of heroes. When we're doing the UI design, we say, okay, what does this website need to do? What are the heroes that we need to build? Oftentimes we'll end up with like 8 to 10 of them. Maybe like content and media, maybe like a slider, maybe a full screen image background, maybe a video background, maybe some kind of broken grid, like whatever it is, like the branded heroes, like that's the first item on the page. And so on a page by page basis, you're going to choose which hero you want to render. And the hero is not a layout building block. The hero is a static one-off thing per page that you choose to render. And for this example, what we've got is a high impact hero, which is just real quick and easy. Just got like an image and some calls to action and a big headline with the large body. And then we show the grid. So it's a 12 column grid. Everything is based on 12 pixels baseline. And it's as simple as can be, right? This is the design isn't crazy, but the idea is that the editor should be able to choose from the heroes. And the first one that we have is the high impact hero that could be good for a home page or like a campaign page or whatever. By the way, I have a cold and I can barely breathe. So if you feel like I'm breathing through my nose, it's because I'm dying. So cool. But yeah, so this is the large breakpoint. This is like 1920 pixels, similar. Breaks down to a laptop screen size. The gutter gets a little bit smaller on the outside there, and the grid gets a little bit more condensed, and then the mobile. But this is all the high impact hero.
Gotcha.
And then we have another medium impact hero, just a little bit less from a visual perspective. It's still got an image. Breaks down on laptop a little bit smaller, and then on mobile stacks vertically. And then finally, we have the low impact. This is the utilitarian ones, just straightforward, no imagery.
Got it. Okay.
If you can choose which hero on a page by page basis, then you can kind of craft the user journey from like the landing page all the way down to the conversion point by starting high and then ending up utilitarian inside like lower level into the user journey. And so typically like this is just 3 different heroes and you can name them whatever you want. But the idea would be that you build your CMS to have a very static set of deliberately designed hero options. And then from there, you start to leverage the layout builder itself.
Right.
But the layout blocks are separate than the hero, right? So you choose the hero and then you go into the layout blocks. And the layout blocks are meant to give variety and versatility because, and maybe to get a little bit philosophical once again, even though I'm a designer, I firmly believe that a successful design does not start by painting a pretty picture or starting in wireframes. It needs to start around the message or the problem at hand and the solution through the content of the page. And so for me as a designer, if somebody asks me to build their website or design their website, I'm going to say, okay, what's your message? What do you need to do? What's your content? Like, what do you want to do with this website? And it's really going to be up to the content to determine the shape of the page, right?
Right.
Every page, like the design of the quote design of the page is really meant on it's based on the content. What
Well,
do we need to do?
and you're bringing up what I think is kind of what I've noticed to be the fundamental tension of block builders and like thoughtful design, right? Because what you end up with is, okay, so the message dictates that we need these things to exist. The blocks dictate that everything needs to fit into these boxes. And one of the main tensions that I see come in is that you've got a very thoughtful layout builder that cannot service the needs of the message that needs to be sent. And so then people talk themselves into well, just this once we'll do a one-off bespoke landing page. Well, just this once we'll like do it as a microsite instead, and then we'll clearly maintain that. We're not going to let that. And then you get this sprawling maintenance burden of like, well, we one-offed that thing. We escaped the design system for this thing. We made a microsite for this launch, and now all of that is aging because it's not maintained with the rest of the system. So as we're looking at so you've got these layout blocks, right? When you're starting with your message, how do you make sure that you've got the right amount of flexibility in your layout blocks to support any message?
Really good question. So we actually at my agency would never even start identifying what layout blocks we need until after we've gone through a very thorough wireframing process. And when I'm saying wireframes, a lot of people like think of wireframes and they just splash something together with like boxes with X's in them. And like, you just check it off your plate. Like as a designer, yep, I did my job. I did wireframes, but it's in reality, like it's so much more important than that, because what you do is you take the message from the client, you take the message from the project, and then you distill it out into, okay, we have this job to do on this page. We have this job to do on this page. We have this job to do on this page. Do we see any overlap with these different jobs? Can we find the lowest common denominator of these pieces that all need to play together, and then like design for the message? We identify what layout building blocks we need based on what each page needs to do.
Right.
So you don't say like, hey, content editor, here's your 6 blocks. Have fun. Write your message according to these 6 blocks. You say, hey, content editor, what's your message? Let me design you some blocks for your message. And you try to be as holistic as possible from square one. So like right when you start, you don't go start pulling stuff out of thin air. You work with wireframes. You try to massage the content into appropriate layouts that are effective. And then you figure out the lowest common denominators and then extract those into your layout blocks.
Gotcha. I understand. So it's not really like because originally you had said, you start with the message and then you go to wireframes, but you even like it sounds like they're kind of in the same thing. Like the message drives the wireframes drive the presentation, which, when you start looking at the presentation of something too, you can also see its visual weight and say, ooh, that's too much of that on that message. Like, let's actually de-emphasize a little bit there, or this needs to be 2 pages. There's too much content for this to be 1 page. Or like, I like it when it feels collaborative like that, where you've got somebody who's the message person, the content owner, and then you've got a designer, and then you've got an engineer, all kind of looking at things from their own perspectives and helping pull out a simplified system. This is challenging, right? I think a lot of companies either don't have the processes in place or don't have the collaborative muscle built to really facilitate this kind of like, hey, let's all get everybody in a room and work on this at once. It's usually like, okay, you do a content and then you throw it at the designer, and the designer will take the content and turn it into a wireframe and throw that at the developer, who will turn it into a thing. So I like I like where your head's at on this.
Absolutely. Like wireframes, I like to stress the importance of wireframes, and I'd like to say that the majority of the design and the thinking actually happens here, rather than the UI phase that would follow that from my process, really. Because the UI phase is really like a designer's job. Like if you're going to be applying branding to wireframes, then the content writers should have little to no overlap there. But in
Right.
the wireframing stage, just like you said, you got to get the engineering involved, you got to get the design thinking involved, and you got to get the writing involved. And there needs to be a collaborative process here, if nowhere else, it needs to happen here. And if you do your job right here, then you're going to have an easy time throughout the rest of the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, head underwater is chiming in to agree. I think that is like it's saying tell me what you need instead of here's what you need. And I think that's it's a subtle but so important distinction when you're working collaboratively to make sure that you don't start by saying I have a solution. You start by asking what problem needs to be solved.
Absolutely.
And that it's so, I mean, I am the worst at this. I love jumping to a solution. Somebody's like, we need a new landing page. I have so many ideas. Instead of saying like, okay, what for? Why do we need to make this? Who is it serving? Who benefits from this existing? Why is this more important than the other list of things that we need to do? Like, who's asking these questions if it's not me? And I think it's a really challenging skill because it's fun to build stuff. I totally want to go do a new design. That sounds like a blast. But we got to start with why. What purpose does it serve?
Well, I feel like a lot of this industry gets a bad rap because they don't follow these principles that we're talking about right now. Exactly what Head Underwater just said. Like, tell me first what you need. Like, if you go on awards.com, there's a lot of really beautiful work on that website, but it's all so designed. It's all, you can even miss the message in 90% of the websites on there because there's so much happening that you just want to scroll and you're looking at the interactions rather than reading the message.
Right.
And to me, that's always a little bit backwards. Like to really be successful in a business goal, you need to say, tell me what you need as a designer, rather than like, here's what my shininess just came out like, right? Like it's backwards if you do that. And I feel like a lot of designers fall into that trap. They end up making beautiful things, but are they utilitarian? Are they useful? Maybe not, right? It's a classic trap.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you want to make art, but remember, like, I went on a little mini rant about this on Twitter not too long ago about how people who are doing this job because they want to do their hobby professionally can do a lot of damage because they're not looking at it as like, I'm here to do a job and I want to do this job as well as I can. They're looking at it as I get to play with my favorite toys for a living and I'm going to play and I don't care if I'm doing a good job. And that leads to a lot of like unnecessary rebuilds and the stuff that you see on awards where it's just it's clearly somebody was like, what if I could make the design do this? And then the message is like what they filled in to make the website not just like lorem ipsum text. It's clearly not about the message at all. Yeah, this is a business, not art school is a great, yeah, that's a good way to put it, Head Underwater. But yeah, so anyway, so we've got layout blocks here. So we talked about heroes. We've got some layout blocks. Let's keep on moving so I don't completely burn the whole time here.
Yeah, I can talk about these types of things for a long time. So yeah, let's keep moving. Okay, so this is like I've been saying, this is very rudimentary. We really have 3 layout blocks for the purpose of this tutorial because I want to show how to like scaffold them and then connect them so that the editor can drag and drop and build things. But the content block is going to be pretty multifaceted. What we've got is maybe like a type field where you can choose between what layout you want. We're not building a column selector. We're not doing like add column, add column, add column. We're saying, hey, choose what layout you want. Is this a single column? Okay. Is this a half and half? Is this 2/3, 1/3? Or is this 3 column? Those are the only options. They can't go crazy. They can't do a 1/5, 4/5. They can't do you know what I'm saying? Like they can't go crazy with any type of column system they want. They're not going to set their widths themselves. They're going to choose from a drop down what layout do you want, and then we need to render them the appropriate rich text editors to fill up those contents based on what type they choose. So if I turn on the grid, like that leaves us to make some pretty like deliberate design decisions because, for example, 1 column content block, if this was stretched all the way over here, that's not going to be good for anybody. There's that classic line, the classic rule in the design world, like limit the amount of words per line so that it's comfortable to read. You don't want to have a 12 column, 1 column block, right? So we can restrict that to 9 columns and keep that a little bit easier to read. And if we do that with like a select field where they drop down and they say, okay, I want a 1 column, then we can enforce that on the editor and they will have no choice. They have to deal with it. And we as designers can back that up when we say, oh, you can't have that be wider because it becomes uncomfortable to read, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and these are these little things that, like, at some point, I just learned that there was like a maximum scan length for lines before it became hard to read. I don't know where I learned that. I don't know why I remember it, but it's just a thing that I do that most people who have not worked as a designer will never, like, why would you ever think about that? Like, sometimes you look at a design and you go, that's kind of hard to read, but you don't know why, you know? So you just sort of like, I'll let somebody else fix it. So letting the system solve these problems is such a critical thing to think through.
Absolutely. That's what we try to do. Even in, like, you'll see when we get to the CMS, but each one of these columns has the ability to add a link below it. And that will all be hard coded. Like the link will only be able to go after the rich text field. So you can't like have a paragraph and then a big button and then another paragraph, because that's going to look all manic, right?
Right.
You want to restrict those things as much as you can.
Absolutely.
They'll all stack the same on mobile. And then we just have a media block just to show like a different type of block. You can either have it centered on the screen or you can have it full screen. Pretty straightforward. Not a lot to see there. And then the last one that we'll look at is the call to action. And this is just like a little banner with a background color and some buttons over on the right-hand side. But like, let's say that this, generally we're going to have like 15 different layout blocks that are very versatile in design and nature, so that the editor can craft very compelling and diversified visual styles throughout the entire website. Especially like if you're doing an enterprise website, you might have 300 pages, each with very different content needs. So your library of layout blocks can be much more than 3, but as long as each one is very deliberately designed and constrained so that they can't hijack the intent.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll go take a look at the CMS. I guess we should probably sign up for a Mongo Atlas, but if we can't do that, we can always just look at the code on GitHub, because this will all be open source and we can even put the links to the GitHub somewhere.
I think I have an Atlas account. So let me see. I'm going to see if they, wait, what if I already signed in? Because I could have sworn that I did this already.
Todd, accessibility, that's a good question from the comments. Everything should be built with accessibility in mind. And admittedly, I'm still learning a lot about that because I feel like it's a moving target. Over time, things change and accessibility needs to keep up with that. But all of the design system, every layout block should be built with accessibility in mind. I don't know if that's a cop-out or not to your question.
We in? Is it happening?
Something's happening.
Something is happening. We're waiting on Google Ads.
No ad block?
Oh, no. Let's see. Come on now.
I don't have ad block either, actually. I should.
I always think about it like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this, and then as soon as I turn it on, like things break in weird ways, and then I think that apps have bugs, and I'm like filing false reports, and they're like, turn off your ad block. I'm like, oh, so I just keep it off. Whatever, it's fine. Okay, so I do have an account, and let's see if they'll let me create. Oh, come on. Is the internet going slow, or are we having a little issue on Mongo?
I'm seeing some pixelization in your webcam here and there, but
how many let's see, how many services can I run on my computer at the same time before it explodes? All right, I'm going to create a new project. We're going to call this Payload CMS, And don't need anything special, right? I just create a project. And while we're doing that, I'm going to reload these. Okay, so here's the CMS, and I need to fork this, right? Or just clone
You
it?
just clone it. Just
Okay.
clone it down.
So I'm going to move into my GitHub here, and there you go.
Yep. Yep. And then the only thing you should have to do is cp.env.example. Oh yeah, you'll also. Do you use Yarn?
I
Actually?
can, sure. Do I
Yeah,
have it installed? I don't have Yarn installed on this computer.
No worries. So then just make sure you pass legacy peer deps. npm
Okay.
install dash legacy peer deps.
Is it like this, or is it camel cased?
Yep. Exactly like that. So dash deps. Yep.
Okay.
Nailed it. And then there's an env example, and you can copy that and make a real env out of it.
Got it.
And that will have your connection string to Mongo inside of it.
Got it. Okay. So
That's pretty much all you need. Payload is all code based, so everything is contained right inside the repo. No migrations.
Nice. All right, so come on. Somebody is like at my door yelling. Let me just close this real quick.
Follow your heart.
Don't know what that's all about. Okay, so let's see. Then you said copy the .env.example to .env.
Yep, and then you want to vim.env and
Here we go. We're in Vim. This is the rest of the episode. All right, so I need to set up my URI and payload secret, which I'm going to do over here.
Yep. So build a database. Yep. Just do the free. That's probably fine.
Okay.
And yep, that's all good.
That's all fine. We'll put it in Oregon because that's close to me. All of this is good. Here we go.
Looks good.
Username and password, right? Or yeah.
Yep.
So we'll do one of these and one of these. Let me auto generate actually, and then I'll copy that. Create the user. All right, now is it going to give me?
Yep, you're going to want to do local environment.
Okay. Do I have to put my own .env in here?
You might have to get your IP. If you just Google what is my IP and then put it in there just to be safe.
Okay.
Yeah, just pop that bad boy in there. Who can say? That's probably going to change too. It's probably not stable.
It'll be fine for now. All right, so we'll do that. Go to databases. And then when I connect, is that going to pop up the string unencrypted?
I don't know, but that actually, yeah, it's probably.
I'm just going to pull it off screen.
Yeah, and then you want to put it in that env file, and then just never open the env file again.
Yep. Okay, so here is my. All right, so I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to. Oh my God! I just remembered how to delete to the end of the string. That was magical. And where the heck is the payload secret? The password I created?
Nope. You can just type in a random string that's used for salting the passwords that are saved in the database.
Got it.
Just the crypto like hashing string.
Got it. Oh, and it did. Wait, get off here, because otherwise you're going to show all my stuff. There we go. There's the password. And escape :WQ. I have quit Vim, everyone. Okay. All right, so that's done.
Okay, so you should be able to just run yarn dev or npm run dev. and then we'll see if you can connect to your database or not. Nope.
App crashed. Bad auth. I did it, but I did it though. Let me see if I need to do anything. Okay, so this is, let me just, it's not actually showing the password. So they escape here. So I created the replace password, right? I did that. Ensure any option params are URL encoded. I did that.
Yeah, that should be it. The only other thing I would think that it might be wrong is if your IP already changed. Like if it's definitely not static, right? Still the same.
That looks the same. So why are you like this? All right, chat, just don't blow my stuff up here. Let's just double check this .env. Do I have to quote anything or?
No,
So this is
that
correct.
looks good. Yeah, that looks good.
All right, what the heck are you doing then? Try it one more time, see if it, no. Cannot connect to MongoDB, bad auth. Okay, so why would it have bad auth? Can I set, you can't just tell it to allow like any, I just want you to allow any connections. That's all. Edit configuration. I did this before and I don't know why it's not working now. Shared, right? That's all correct. Turn on, yeah, that's all fine. So what are you like? Command line tools, load sample dataset, that's not it either. Now I can't even find that thing. Connect on your VS Code, that's not right.
Compass. If you do the Compass one, that might give you a connection string.
That looks exactly the same though.
Does it? I think there's a few less options there at the end.
All right, let's just delete some options. It still doesn't like the auth. So I don't know why it doesn't like that auth, but I maybe we just need to look at the code here because we're gonna run out of time otherwise.
Yep, I think that's fine.
All right, so let's do that. I'll pull it up in here, and we can peek at it.
There's going to be plenty to see if we just look at the code anyway. So
okay, great. So all right, I'm in the code.
Yep. Okay, so a payload app is basically an Express server.
Okay.
And so the entry point is server.ts. And it uses your own Express server. So in the future, we're going to create some way to deploy this to Lambda functions or even edge functions. But for now, this is all how it is. So you just create a new Express server and then run payload.init async and listen on your Express server. So if you want to mount any other Express routes or if you want to continue to maintain functionality outside of payload, you own your own Express server and you can do whatever you want. But
Got
like,
it.
for example, one of the cool things that we're doing in this file is that we're seeding initial data. So you can see on line 24 right there how we are seeding. If we have an environment variable called payload seed, then we'll just automatically create like a first user and we'll create a home page for you and upload some media. So let's go into that seed script and let's take a look at that.
Okay, that's coming in from seed here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Right. So this is all with Payload's local API, and it's just an async function that will create a user, and that's just a simple dummy localhost user. So password is test. But then we're creating a media document as well, and we're actually uploading a local JPEG directly from our Git repo into the database and into our cloud storage.
Got it.
So there will be a photo that we can use in our posts, and then we're creating some homepage JSON and we're replacing a bunch of media relationship IDs there. So just all like a regex for replacing that with the image ID, creating a page, creating another page. And then finally, we're creating the main menu. And the main menu there is a global. So this is something that Payload does that a lot of other CMSs don't do. Like collections are many documents of the same shape, but globals are a singleton. There's only one. So you can use that for things like site meta, for headers, footers, etc., like menu structures, things that don't exist more than once. And so we're
Right.
creating that right there.
Nice.
And yeah, that's it. It's all just seeded data. So when we fire this up, say we could get Mongo working, then we would be able to instantly see all this information in the database.
Very cool. Yeah. Okay. And then, all right. So once we're in here, and then like these are just the actual data of the page, which
Yep.
structured data is always nice. You can kind of figure out what's going on. Pretty straightforward. So we've got a block called hero. It's got a rich text type. It has children in it. I love stuff like that.
Yep.
So
then let's go to the payload config.
There we go.
The payload config is the entry point for any payload app. And this is how you completely define everything that payload specifically does. So we looked at the server, but that didn't have anything about our like collection schemas or anything. All of that's done in the payload config. And this config is all TypeScript. You can import React components. You can pass React components directly to the config and it will render them in the dashboard. Everything is done right here. And this is a pretty simple one, but you can see we have 3 collections: media, pages, and users. And then we have the one global from main menu. But if you can go into pages, we'll look at that real quick. Pages are set up to be a collection config. And we have versions and drafts enabled just by passing drafts true.
Okay.
So that'll allow you to maintain draft copies of a page before you publish it. And then you can preview those in your front-end environment. Access control read is set to only allow people to read published only, which is pretty cool.
Okay. I'm going to click into that, and because it's okay. So basically this is like you get to say only the user's own stuff or only logged in users.
So this is saying if there is a user, then they can read whatever they want. Return true, they read whatever they want.
Right. And
but
so
if there is no user, then we're going to return a query constraint that dynamically restricts which documents can be read to only those that have a status of published.
Gotcha. So this is the, like, by default, the public role is anything that you've published within the CMS is visible because it would be visible on the website anyways. So, you don't have to worry about somebody hitting that endpoint.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's all kinds of access control stuff you can do. You can restrict, create, read, update, delete, versions, everything you can do right there. But the cool part is that by returning that query constraint, that like dynamically gets built up into when we actually go to fetch the data. So it's a very cool, very granular security system that lets you build any type of access control you can think of. It's much more than role-based, although you could do role-based access control if you
Gotcha.
want to.
Yeah, I got you. I understand. Cool. So then we're defining our fields. And then Todd has a good question about the is it keyboard nav? Like if I know I can't, because I can't get Mongo running, I can't actually open this up to try it. But if I'm in, like, can I do keyboard nav through the whole CMS?
Yes. Nice. Yes, you can. We do have, it's an ongoing effort to continue to improve it. Like, for example, like the rich text editor has like 16 toolbar buttons in some cases, and sometimes you might want to skip those. So we have like a skip to input like button that we want to build. Like there's just like basically a never ending amount of improvements that we can make, and we're going to start focusing on that seriously. But yeah, you can navigate around with the keyboard for sure.
And then Dertiran is asking, is versions, does that include like kind of an audit log, who published what at what time?
Yes, you can diff them too, right in the CMS.
I do love a good diff.
Yeah, it's the package. I'm not a big fan of the package that we use, to be honest. Like, it's very impressive, but they haven't updated to React 18, and it hasn't been updated in a minute. So that's why I
Okay.
had you do the legacy peer deps,
Oh, I gotcha.
because of the diffing package.
Gotcha.
They don't support React 18. So, but yeah, you would, if you want to diff like what version was created or updated by who, you would just have like a updated by field that gets dynamically populated by the user, right? Like using a field hook. So then like that would store on each version, whenever anybody creates a version of a document,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be able to diff and see who created that document.
Gotcha. I understand. Cool. Yeah, that's great. And the diffs are always so useful. I have a technical question that you're free to defer on. How are you actually managing that? Like, is it like, are you using CRDTs? Are you using something else?
The actual versions themselves.
Like, yeah, how are you managing those diffs? Like, how do you keep track of that type of collaborative editing?
Oh, that's a good question. So because we're using Mongo, we have another separate collection for the versions for any given collection. And we just store the entire document. And we give controls to say
Okay.
how many versions do you want to store before we start deleting the old ones.
Hmm.
And then you just diff the entire document against the currently published one. So
Gotcha.
we did that very intentionally, because that way, if you want to merge in fields, like if you want to read a draft post, you want to merge in some fields from the publish and the draft to create like one full document. It's a little bit easier. Also for access control reasons, because the same way that you can return a query constraint from that read access control, you can do the same thing for versions as well.
Okay.
And all that does is just builds up a Mongo query that you can get very granular. You can say these versions should be readable by the public, and then only these versions should be readable by logged in users or whatever, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, but this right here, what you're looking at, see that fields hero on line 33? So the UI, and I think, so anybody that's watching this, you can pull up this code and run it on your own machine. But we have it split up into tabs, and the first tab is a hero tab. And if you go into that line 33, that hero, the cool thing about Payload is because it's all config based, you can organize your fields and reuse your fields and abstract them into separate files and do whatever you want, all in TypeScript, and make it really, really maintainable and extensible. So like this hero field might be used in other types of collections in the future. So you put it into a field, like another file, and then we just import it and pass it to the config. It's not JSON, it's full TypeScript. So you can use functions to generate these things. You can extend them. You can do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty cool. I'll get back to that in a second, Jason.
Got it. Great. Okay. So we've got our fields here. We're feeding in the fields as what looks to be a collection of additional fields. So it's kind of like a grouped block, which is that's always kind of a nice way to work. So it's not just a stack of inputs. It's they're thematically associated with each other to actually be part of the same thing. And then let's see what else should we look at?
There's one other thing in the hero that I want to look at real quick in that file. So, and if you scroll down, you can see we have high impact, medium impact, and low impact. Those are the select options. Those are the type, like I was mentioning. And that's how the editor will be able to choose, okay, what type do I want? But remember, if you remember back to the mockups, the low impact had no media field, right? But the high and the medium did have a media field.
Right.
So scroll down a little bit and find that media field right here. You can see we have a condition that will conditionally render this field if the type is either high impact or medium impact. So if you choose low impact, this field will simply just omit itself from the admin UI.
Nice.
Which is super cool. This feature, it pains me to admit this, but WordPress did it the best. And WordPress is one of the only CMSs with advanced custom fields that has conditional logic like this. I think Directus is starting to have it as well. But this is super powerful because you can build really flexible and dynamic UI for your admins so that they only ever see what's relevant to them at the time.
Yeah. I mean, people like we gotta let's give WordPress its flowers. Like there's a reason that it powers 40% of the internet, whatever the amount is. It's because it's really good. The reason people dislike WordPress is because they like built too complicated of things on top of it. The core of WordPress is fantastic, and advanced custom fields is potentially the most useful plugin of my entire career.
Agreed. It was a huge inspiration for what we did with Payload, because like I've done a lot of stuff I'm really proud of with WordPress, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Like, over the years,
I built my whole career on it. I did a decade of work as an agency runner, all in WordPress, because I tried building my own CMS and I spent all my time maintaining the dang CMS. I was like, I should just use WordPress and like focus on supporting my clients instead of all this, I was doing marketing websites. There was no reason for me to be building and maintaining my own CMS. It was just because I thought it was fun. Remember, chat, when I talk about passionate developers causing problems, it was me. I have caused more problems for myself and my teams than anybody I know, because I get excited about things and want to do them for the sake of doing them. And sometimes it's just, you just got to use the right tool for the job and don't reinvent a wheel. But yeah, so I mean, this is such a killer feature, because it is so hard when you've got a CMS to train people that like certain fields don't always work. Just an absolute nightmare to try to get that across.
Nailed it. I completely agree. Like, yeah, it's been a thorn in my side for a lot of bigger projects that I've used, like more modern headless CMSs, like where I did not use WordPress and I went with another modern one that lacked conditional logic. And like the editors are like, okay, I got to skip over these 16 fields because they don't apply right now.
Exactly.
And I have to cognitively like associate these fields apply here, but not here, but not here. And like you just hide them in Payload. And it's just a function that you return a Boolean and you're done.
Yep.
It was really hard to make that performant, I'll tell you that. Because if you see that condition function has two arguments, the first one is underscore because we're not using it here, but the second one is sibling data. And sibling data is only the immediately adjacent fields. So like the first argument is the full document, and then you can parse down whatever. But like if you're deep inside of an array or deep inside of a block and you only need to look at that row of the data, then you can use the sibling data argument and look at the immediately adjacent fields, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, because I mean, there are reasons that you would want to do something like you have a global setting for. Well, actually, this wouldn't even be that, because this is the individual document.
Yep.
Got it.
Individual document, but like even like, let's say you have a mega menu and you have like 13 links, and you want to enable a icon for a mega menu item, and it's the 8th item, and you need to show and hide that field based on the 8th item's checkbox, right? Like you have to be able to drill down, and how do you know you're in the 8th one? How do you know? It's complicated, but basically we took care of all of it for you. Yeah. And that's why we're pulling type from the sibling data right there.
Yeah, that's nice. That is very nice. Because a lot of I mean, at least my conditional logic is almost always related to the document itself. Like and to something that's nearby. Like I have switched off the image toggle. I need to hide the image field, right? Like something like that, right? It's almost never like, well, we checked the box in a global setting that should enable this extra thing, and like sometimes you need that, but it's pretty rare.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's all we really needed to look at in the hero, and we're almost done with the payload side, and then we can jump over to the next side.
Nice. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left here, so why don't we hop on over, unless there was something very specific you wanted to show?
Just the blocks, like, and you're right there. So this will be one minute, but just scroll down a little bit in the tab there, or in the pages. Right here, you can see we've got a layout with blocks.
Yep.
And then we import the 3 different blocks that we have. And those are configs that each correspond to one of the blocks that we've built in our design. So you can maintain this. You can add additional blocks, just import them and pass it. And then we'll map these blocks and these field schemas to React components on the front end, one-to-one.
Got it. All right. So let's hop in to this, and you know what, I'm just gonna even skip the part where we have to download this thing, and I'm going to open it up in GitHub's editor.
That's a really good idea.
These things are so dope.
I know. I always forget about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't like advertise it very well, but for anybody who's going, what did you just do? You just have to press the period button when you're looking at a repo, and it's going to turn this on. So this is like a VS Code in the browser. It's dope.
Yes. Very cool.
But my connection is going to mess with me today. Come on, go, go, go.
It'll be worth it. Yeah, I got to use this more.
You know, you say this is going to be faster than cloning it, and then the universe immediately teaches you a lesson. Let's see if I can get to. Give me the content. Come on. Oh, it's activating extensions. It's turning a bunch of stuff on. So this is that like first load experience where it's got to configure based on the project settings and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, this is just a straight up Next site, so I would expect this to be pretty fast actually. But
I think they have a handful of things that got to get reload required. Don't you do that to me. Come on. Let's go. Here we go. Go faster. There we go. Here's our stuff.
Beautiful. All right. So I'm sure that the universe is familiar with Next.js at this point, because if you're not, you should be. I love Next. It's beautiful. But what we've got here, and you went right to it. So okay, this is interesting. So you ever have like a homepage template? It needs to be reached by / whatever. But then it's the same exact rendering necessary for like any other page. So like your homepage will render the same quote template as your about page, whatever. They're both pages and they both come from the same place in the CMS, but you need to have 2 different files stubbed out in Next.js for that. Here's our solution to that. So I just import from the .slug, and then I re-export from this, and then I share the code. You see that?
Gotcha. Okay. So into the slug we go.
Yeah, this is where all the meat is of the page, but it's statically rendered. So all we're doing is we're rendering out the hero and the blocks. We have components for those 2 things. So the hero will be responsible for selecting which hero type you've decided to render, and then it will render it. And then the blocks, we pass it the array of block data, which is all fetched by GraphQL. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can see Apollo client where we're fetching a page from the query, and we're actually caching. We're using Apollo specifically here to cache data so that when we statically build our site, and if there's 300 pages, you got to blast that global data endpoint. You got to fetch the main menu, the footer, all those different global pieces of data you need to fetch for every single page that you statically render.
Right.
And if you're doing that 300 times, then that's 300 hits to your API, all for the same exact data.
Yeah.
So what we've done is get Apollo client, which if you command click into that, or however we do that here, index.
Let's see, is this going to do the thing I want? It is going to do the thing I want. Perfect. No, it's
almost.
not.
Still got to click on the path there.
Come on, dog. There we go. Nope.
File is addressed.
There we go. Here we go.
So we basically keep it as a let on line 3, and if it doesn't exist, then we new it up. But if it already exists, then we return it, which will allow us to cache those global data queries so that only the first page that's statically rendered will fetch them, and then we just use them from cache. Therefore, we don't blow up our CMS API. You could, but just a little optimization that I think is cool.
Well, and I don't know if Payload CMS has rate limits, but a lot of APIs will have rate limits, and it can be surprising when you're building, when you're statically generating something, that during your build process, you hit the rate limit, and you're like, what? Why? I only called, it's just one build, but each page is a request, and like a fast build system is going to send off 500 requests in under a second, which most APIs that weren't designed for that kind of static build will go, wait, this is wrong, and then they shut you down, and then you have to you had to add like timeouts or something. Like it can get really challenging. So figuring better ways to complete that will help.
Totally. Yeah, we do have rate limits, but it's customizable because you own your server. So you can increase the rate limit, turn it off, whatever you want. But yeah, it's just an optimization that I think is cool. Nice. But hopping back over to that slug file there.
Yep.
So,
all right, so we've loaded our data.
Yep.
And here it is. We get it out. So we send in the page. Where did this page come from?
Imported it
Oh,
from
it's
the
imported. Got
GraphQL.
it. Okay.
Yep.
And then we send in the variable slug. Good.
Yep. And then boom, done. Fetch the data.
Beauty.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. And then we use the data. So I guess we could go look at the hero component or the blocks component, either one.
Let's do it. So this hero component, I think, is going to be fun because it is, let's see, it's going to be one of these. So let's start with the high impact.
Yep. So not a lot of code. We always use faceless UI wherever we can. It's like it's our homegrown set of components. Like
Okay.
I like Tailwind. I like what Tailwind is doing. I've never really used Bootstrap or Material UI ever. I like to roll my own CSS, and so like this little framework here, it's not a lot of code, but it's pretty straightforward. And I don't think I needed to pull in a library for that, so I did. The only things that we're leveraging faceless UI for are the CSS grid, which is pretty nice because you specify your grid settings and how it breaks down to your breakpoints, and you're good to go. Like that's it.
Nice. Cool. So we've got so we're setting up a gutter, which I'm assuming is your margin system that you've made. Oh, your left and right. And then we've got grid and cell. Okay, so that gives us the ability to set up the because it's a 12 column grid.
Correct.
And then we throw in the rich content, which we saw over here. Where are my heroes?
Scroll up. Yep.
So we've got rich content here, right?
Yep.
And then we've got links. So these are the calls to action, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And so that's going to be these.
Yep.
And then we've got our media.
Exactly.
Which is here. And then if we go to low impact, it's much simpler. It doesn't have any of that media, and it's just rich text.
Exactly. And then that index.tsx is what's responsible for determining which hero to render. So all we do is create a keyed like store of the heroes and then render the hero that they selected. So it's real simple.
Yeah. Nice and straightforward. Well, cool. I mean, this is like the structure of this makes sense, right? Like you've got a CMS. The data in the CMS is structured. It's got TypeScript. It's going to give us the ability to kind of define our different blocks down to the field level, but then kind of expanding up into these more like comprehensive, like here's the full block. And you could probably even take that a step further and like compose blocks into pre-made layouts if you wanted to make templates or things like that. And then what comes out in the React app or the Next app is basically the same structure of content, right? And then you just kind of map a component to the layout block. Do you have any tips or tricks with the like 2 minutes we have left for people who are building these out to help with the maintenance of like, as your CMS evolves, how do you keep it from breaking your components too badly?
Number one, use TypeScript. That's huge. That's honestly saved me so much time and effort over the last like 2 or 3 years. Like we went full in on it and we never looked back, and it was huge. Be as strict as you can with your typing. Try to leverage it as much as possible. Don't use any. You're going to sort a lot of things out on your own just by using TypeScript. But also try to, I wouldn't try to refactor and try to stay as dry as you can until you have the majority of the parts in place, and then you can kind of consolidate at that point. But that's a step that you should definitely do. Like deliberately do it. Like set aside some time. Like, okay, we've got most of this in place. Now it's time to try to dry up some of it if we can.
Sure.
And that will help you over the long run. But don't do it too prematurely, because if you do, then you're going to create heartache for yourself. But just having that mindset of like, try to do that at some point, that's going to help out a lot.
Gotcha. All right. So, James, where should someone go if they want to dig deeper and do more?
Well, I think we should circulate the links to those 2 repos. Those would be great learning resources for people if they want to take a look at those.
All right. So we'll toss those into the chat here, and then I think I can Go to repository. There it is. Drop that one.
And then getting started with Payload is just npx create Payload app, and you're good to go. And then our
Okay.
docs are pretty comprehensive. We've got a couple of videos on YouTube to check out to get you going. But yeah, that should be nice and easy.
Nice. All right. So make sure everyone go and follow James. If you have more questions about Payload, you want to ask anything, you can just send that straight across. This episode, like every episode, has been live captioned. We've had Rachel with us all day from White Coat Captioning. Thank you so much, Rachel. And that's made possible through the support of our sponsors, Netlify, NX, New Relic, and soon Pluralsight, all kicking in to make this show more accessible to more people, which I appreciate very much. While you're checking out things on the site, make sure you go and take a look at the schedule. We've got so much good stuff coming up. It's going to be incredible. We had a switch. Mark is not able to join us, so we're going to have Eli Lucas instead. But we're going to look at component tests in web apps using Cypress. That's going to be super fun. We're going to have Brian LaRue talking about the new framework Enhance. Colby Fayok is going to talk about Next.js images using Cloudinary. Big Cloudinary fan. Joyce Park, we had to reschedule this one because I couldn't get my computer to work. We're going to talk about FIDO2, so like logging into websites with your fingerprint scanner or Face ID. And then Shonday, if you haven't seen Shonday's original episode, you should go and check it out. She's incredible. She's going to be talking about React app performance. It's going to be super fun. And then Seb is coming on. We're going to talk about documentation with Docusaurus 2.0 is out now. And that's just what I've had time to put on the site. There will be more. So make sure you add on Google Calendar, follow on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, all the things, because it makes my little heart smile to see those numbers go up. James, thank you so much for taking some time to hang out. This has been an absolute blast. Any parting words before we go and raid? We're going to go raid Julie Strader.
I am excited to see you at the Jamstack Conf.
Yes. Please get tickets to Jamstack Conf, everyone. It is going to be so much fun. We have an in-person event. If you're in the San Francisco area or want to come, there's going to be a bunch of us there. It's going to be super fun. We've got a lot of like good parties. We're going to do like a puppy petting party if you want low key, or we've got an algo rave with Dan Gorlick and Char Stiles, who have been on the show before, where we're going to do like music and it'll be super fun. Or you can attend for free online if you want. Virtually, we're going to have all sorts of fun stuff going there as well. So James, we'll see you at Jamstack Conf. Thank you all for hanging out. We're going to go raid Julie Strader. We'll see you all next time.